I want to jump right into it. Let's start with the pesticide bill. I think it's one of the most important bills this year, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Tell me about the pesticide bill and tell me what regular people, regular citizens of the U.S. have no idea what it is all about. And why should they care?
So Section 453 is a rider. It's an amendment that they shoved into an appropriations bill. This is at the federal level. And it's a rider. And what they typically use, I mean, we've all seen now that we are more awake and more involved in politics and how they're passing laws. We see what happens. And so what they do is they work all the angles and take it, take advantage of, exploit rules to try and pass things that otherwise wouldn't get passed if it was a standalone bill, for example.
Like with the omnibus?
Exactly. So it's a rider, and what they're doing is it's 9 lines. It's super short. And what they are saying is that no federal funds can be used by the EPA to update any labels or approve any labels that would be inconsistent with a pesticide chemical's current carcinogenic classification or health assessment. So
translated to a normal
translation.
language?
So I always want to start with what the bill says because I think that's a good place to start. So that's basically the EPA cannot use any money, so they can't do anything. You're basically defunding the EPA from updating or changing labels if any information comes out now that shows that those labels are if the change would be inconsistent with the way that the label is currently written, meaning the EPA can't change labels. If new information comes that says, for example, okay, well, the carcinogenic classification should actually be higher or perhaps even lower, the EPA is like, well, sorry, this rider passed, and so I can't use any funds to change that label, to change the classification or health assessment. I mean, just in very simple terms, the EPA cannot change any labels to make them, they just can't change or approve or update any labels if they would be inconsistent with the labels that are currently in existence right now. So as new information comes out, new data comes out, they cannot change it unless they do a new health assessment, which per the EPA, you go to the EPA's website, takes a minimum of 4 years and up to 12 years. So for at least 4 years and up to 12 years, we will be looking at chemicals with old, outdated labels until the new health assessment is over.
What's the name of the bill?
It's a rider. It's Section 453 in the House Appropriations Bill.
So it didn't pass. Was it on the floor in the House already?
It was in the Appropriations Committee, and what happened was, it's really interesting, but I'm a big nerd for this stuff, so if you want to know the details, the nitty-gritty is that the bill, there was the representative from Maine, I forgot her name, Connie or Corey or something, from Maine. She's an older lady with blonde, short hair. I say this so that when people go watch the testimony, like I know they'll do after we speak today, what she proposed was an amendment to strike out Section 453, among other things. She had various amendments. So this huge appropriations bill came in. There are riders in this bill that have nothing to do with funding, or they do in a very tangential way. And so she had proposed an amendment to strike out the rider from the appropriations bill. And ironically or not, most of the Democrats that spoke up, or all of the Democrats that spoke up, were in support of her amendment to take out Section 453 because they're about the environment. They're about protecting farmers. They want to protect the land, the little guy who's getting poisoned by these pesticides in the waters. So all of the Democrats spoke up. They supported her amendment. They wanted to strike Section 453. And then we had all of the Republicans speaking out against her amendment and saying, no, we want to keep this rider in. So
because Republicans are for big business?
Exactly. They're always for their chemical donors. So absolutely. So it's very interesting though, because, we have MAHA happening, and people are thinking, well, we have the Republican president, and he obviously joined forces with the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Bobby Kennedy Jr. And so it's very confusing, but we're talking about the old guard and the new guard. Mm-hmm. So we have the old, deeply entrenched, older Republicans who have to kowtow to their donors, and they're not about the little guy. They're about big business. Lindsey Graham? Say it again.
Like Lindsey Graham? Who's the old guard?
Course. Yes. Every Republican that's that's been in Congress and who's been there for years, the old guard.
And there are dozens of them?
Oh yeah. Yes, I can pull up right now how many there are. I have it. I did an Instagram post on that, but.
So the only problem to solve this is term limits?
Oh, absolutely. That's a whole other podcast, how to reform the government. But yeah, I would absolutely agree, because if you are up for re-election every X, set number of years, then you're going to be doing what's in the best interest of your constituents instead of what's in the best interest. I mean, you don't really have any obligation to anybody if you don't, if you can just be in there in perpetuity.
So what's next with this pesticide bill? What's coming next and when?
We don't know. They snuck this rider in, and I can pull it up for you right now and let you know. Well, the first thing is this bill is a little bit hard, not hard, but they're sneaky, obviously, up in the federal government. Let me just, let me pull this up. Next steps, if you go to Facts, Law, Truth, Justice, my substack.substack.com, I have a what to do now. So right now it's in the House, and there are actually 2 other really bad sections, but we need you to call your representatives, and you can find your representatives. You just Google who's my House of Representatives representative, you put your address in and they pull up the information. I also just put a list to all the Republican members, because those are the ones that are voting to protect this rider, to keep in these protections.
And all of the Republicans are against this?
So this was the nitty gritty details that I was going to share with you, is that they did what's called an audible, like in an audible vote, like in a football game. Mm-hmm. So the chair Tom Cole didn't even have them. Usually the secretary will register the votes. Everyone votes, and then she logs them and counts them. So they did an audible vote, and he goes, everyone who was in favor of the amendment that would have struck the rider out of the appropriations bill, say yay, yay. Everybody's in favor, and against it, say nay, nay. He's like, oh, sounds like the nays have it. So that's literally how this went. So when I tell you I don't know what's going to happen, we don't know when this is going to be pulled, but this brought up again. But certainly we want you calling your representative saying we're paying attention, we know what's going on, and if this bill comes to the floor, we need you to vote no on the bill.
Does it matter? Do they care?
I mean,
whether they get the calls or not?
I do. I think so. We saw that, that big bill that was the federal, I'm totally spacing on the name of the representative now, the legislator now, but the one about the federal lands that they were going to sell, they were going to privatize the federal lands and sell them off essentially to BlackRock. There was enough uproar about that we were able to stop that bill. He said he was going to pull it because he heard the voices of his constituents, and he realized that there was a lot more to consider before he was able to pass that bill. So, or present it to his colleagues for a vote. So if you get loud enough, I mean, if this is the thing, Apollo, no one has been paying attention for decades. They have literally been doing whatever they want. They go to their lunch meetings, they present things, they do backdoor deals, and no one's paying attention. I say it all the time, and I've said it a lot the last couple of podcasts I've done, is that COVID was a blessing and a curse, because we were online. Those of us who were paying attention learned how to access our representatives via Zoom meetings, how to access the meetings themselves remotely, submit comments remotely, use the online commenting process. Like, there's so much. And then we shared information remotely, and we were able to expand our networks and share information on such a larger scale than before. And so it was a really challenging time, but it was also a very informative and transformative and empowering time, in my opinion. Like, look at what we're doing today. And so I think that, it does make a difference. And for a very, very long time, they did things and no one even knew what was going on. And now we know. And now we talk about it on the internet. And now we post it on Instagram and Twitter, and we tag them. And all their constituents are like, Representative blank, what's going on here? And making phone calls. And it's at the end of the day, for as big as the government is, these people are human beings. And we have to remember that they're human beings, and they just want to keep their jobs. So, I think it matters. It absolutely does.
But this thing with pesticide it benefits only the big companies.
Right.
It can't benefit a single person, right?
Right. And so what it does is, and people are saying that it grants immunity, and I do think that, we'll talk about another bill, Assembly Bill 495, which is a California bill, and this other bill, SB whatever 86 or 466 or whatever that just passed. I think it is important, and the reason why I do the work that I do and I write the Substacks that take 3 or 4 hours to write is because when you do go advocate for yourselves and your children, you want to know really what's going on. And when we say it creates immunity, we kind of sound like dodos, and it's really easy to debunk what we're saying, right? Because we don't actually know what the bill says or what it will do. So the pesticide bill does not grant blanket immunity, for example, like the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act of 1986. That literally says immunity for vaccine manufacturers, developers, researchers, administrators, etc. This bill says the EPA basically, like we just went over, can't change the labels. And so what happens is it creates a defense for pesticide companies when they get sued in state court under state mislabeling and branding laws and pesticide laws. We'll just call them that. So I have a client. She's been injured because the label was inaccurate. There's a failure to warn lawsuit. We say Bayer's label did not warn about this side effect, and my client used it for 20 years, and then she had a baby, and the baby has deformed and has whatever it is. I don't have a case like this, but for example, so I go to court, and then what Bayer does, the first thing they do is a motion to dismiss, or they do some sort of a motion to dismiss my case because they say, well, I couldn't, the attorneys say, my client could not update the label because federal law, which trumps state law, we tried. They can even lie. They said Bayer wanted to update the label. Bayer wanted to tell you and your clients and everybody about the birth defects, but the federal law prevented them from doing so. So what it's called is an impossible preemption doctrine. So it creates a defense for these chemical companies when they get sued. They can pretend like they were good guys and they wanted to get change the label, but they couldn't because the federal government held back funds and tied the EPA's hands from doing what these wonderful chemical companies wanted to do, which was disclose all of the horrible side effects of their drugs.